Tonight at 10, the Chancellor sets out how she plans to spend more than £1 trillion of public money over the next 4 years.
In place of decline, I choose investments. In place of pessimism, division and defeatism, I choose national renewal.
The Chancellor has completely lost control. This is the spend now, tax later review.
From health, transport and housing to large infrastructure projects, we'll be taking you through the plans. Also tonight. Violence spreads to another town in Northern Ireland. A leisure centre in Larne is set alight this evening.
And here in Ballymena, there's now a third night of violence. Police have asked for help from other forces to deal with the trouble.
6-month-old Siwa, whose photo in Gaza shocked the world. Now we're with her on her journey to Jordan to receive vital medical care.
And so Siwa has just arrived. She's now going to be taken to Amman, where there'll be a diagnosis and the beginning of her treatment.
And Brian Wilson, who created the unique sound of the Beach Boys, has died at the age of 82.
On BBC London, a boost for housing, but is there enough money for policing and transport? We'll have reaction to how London fared in the spending review.
Hello, welcome to the BBC News at 10. The Chancellor has laid out how she's going to divide more than £1 trillion of public money between government departments over the next 4 years. In her spending review, which looks at longer-term funding and is separate to the budget, Rachel Reeves also set out more than £100 billion in additional funding for future projects, including nuclear power, defence and transport. Overall, government department budgets will grow by 2.3% above inflation per year, but not all. Some, including the Department for the Environment, the Foreign Office and the Home Office, will get less, while defence, health and science and technology get more. The NHS in England gets an extra £29 billion a year for day-to-day running. That is more than was expected. There is £39 billion for social and affordable housing in England over 10 years. And the Chancellor said that hotels would no longer be used to house asylum seekers by 2029, saving £1 billion a year. The Conservatives described the Chancellor's plans as a spend now, tax later review. Our political editor, Chris Mason, has the story of the day.
This wasn't a budget day and had none of its fanfare, or tax rises, or hikes in the cost of a pint.
When will we feel better off, Chancellor?
But one question, that one still dominating, the biggest of all for Rachel Reeves.
I call the Chancellor of the Exchequer to make a statement. Rachel Reeves.
We are renewing Britain. But I know that too many people in too many parts of our country are yet to feel it. And the purpose of this spending review is to change that.
The emphasis today was on long-term spending, capital spending as it's known, or investment as the Chancellor repeatedly called it, including this on what's described as affordable housing in England.
I am proud to announce the biggest cash injection into social and affordable housing in 50 years. A new affordable homes programme in which I am investing £39 billion over the next decade.
Also absolutely key today, how much money would be set aside for the health service in England. About £4 in every 10 of public spending day to day goes on the NHS, so how it fares has a big knock-on for everything else.
I am proud to announce today that this Labour government is making a record cash investment in our National Health Service, increasing real terms day-to-day spending by 3% per year for every single year of this spending review.
That is a generous increase compared to plenty of other budgets, and why there are squeezes elsewhere we heard rather less about from Rachel Reeves. The other big and rising spending choice is defence.
So that defence spending will now rise to 2.6% of GDP by April 2027, including the contribution of our intelligence agencies.
The day-to-day extra money for schools in England is limited, but there was this promise.
People who went to ordinary comprehensives in the 80s and 90s are all too familiar with the experience of being taught in temporary classrooms. It wasn't acceptable when I was at school, and it isn't acceptable now. So I am providing investment rising to nearly £2.3 billion per year to fix our crumbling classrooms.
Rachel Reeves said the government will end the use of hotels to house asylum seekers by 2029, and that'll mean the Home Office needs less money. But after very public arguments about what's needed to tackle crime, the police in England and Wales are getting an extra 2.3% in real terms. This was the Chancellor's conclusion.
These are Labour choices. These are the choices of the British people, and I commend this statement to the House.
And the reaction to all this starts now.
Bell strike.
This is the spend now, tax later review. Because the Right Honourable Lady knows she will need to come back here in the autumn with yet more taxes. And a cruel summer of speculation awaits.
We are still not seeing the scale of ambition needed to turn the country around. We welcome the announcement of investment in the NHS, but on its own, it won't work unless the government invests in social care too.
Public confidence is plunging. Business confidence is plunging. And the truth is, jobs, 250,000 jobs are disappearing since the blunder budget.
The Scottish National Party said there was no respite for farmers or businesses. Plaid Cymru was sceptical about the money for Welsh railways. And the Green Party called for a wealth tax on the mega-rich. Chancellor, thanks for your time today. You'll make an argument that long-term spending is savvy, but people have to inevitably wait for that.
Well, I'm not going to apologise for making the long-term decisions in our country's interest. It may take time for those trams and those trains to arrive, but we'll have spades in the ground in this Parliament, creating good jobs for local people in communities all across the UK.
The police are saying this afternoon that they are being left short again. Is that really sensible, that squeeze in the Home Office?
Well, the police budget is going up by, the spending power for the police is going up by 2.3% a year.
They worry it's still going to amount to being really tough for them.
I recognise that not everyone has been able to get exactly what they want in this spending review, but we've allocated £190 billion more for day-to-day spending during this forecast period, more money for capital investment. We're not able to do everything that everyone would want.
Ironically, Rachel threatened to put me in the hospital if I didn't stop pestering her in the spending review and just accepted that we'd done very well.
This man, the Health Secretary, is happy. Not everyone's smiles are quite so broad. Chris Mason, BBC News at Westminster.
So what difference will all this make to public services and the wider economy? Our economics editor Faisal Islam has been looking at the numbers.
Spending reviews are all about choices, priorities, big picture decisions to last us till the end of the decade. And this is the total amount of spending that will be done in 2029, £1.5 trillion, £1,500 billion. Today's spending review allocated a portion of that sum till the end of the decade. Let's see how that breaks down. And it's these two types of spending that were being divvied up today. Spending by departments and investment spending on major projects. And it's worth noting substantial amounts of money being spent on welfare, pensions and interest payments over there were not covered today. But there are squeezing things here. Let's break down further what was decided today in those two pieces of the pie. Let's start with long-term capital, major projects investment spending. This is the percentage rise or fall by Cabinet Minister's department. There's an interesting pattern. Defence is the new priority. You can see there, John Healey, all that investment in military kit. Transport near the top two, a big winner, as all those new train lines for Heidi Alexander, and energy, the government retaining its commitment to the net zero transition, leaving Ed Miliband looking happy. But there are a few losers here too. This over here, then the Foreign Office, David Lammy, that is a hit to the aid budget. But let's change this around and look at day-to-day spending by department. It all changes. The big winner, Peter Kyle in the Science and Tech Department. That is the state-funded AI revolution. All the way over there again, and you see the Foreign Office budget for David Lammy going down. That's the aid budget again. What else have we got? We've got transport over here. That's cut on this measure, and that reflects the fact that train companies require less subsidy. Now, passenger numbers have normalised after the pandemic. There is a story behind every bar. Health too, a big winner, 3% rise, but in cash terms, by far, West Streeting Department is the biggest winner. So the big picture about this spending review, though, is really about investing. And this is an important chart showing the rate of investment by the government as a percentage of the economy. This is now over the half-decade, the highest sustained period of investment that we've seen since the early 1980s, well above what they inherited from the Conservatives. And it's occurring because of a change the Chancellor made to her borrowing rules. It's a big deal. They hope that this will lever in lots of private investment too. Now, timing for investment, take a look at this. So much of this was front-loaded in the first couple of years and then falls away because they want to see spades in the ground. But some of these projects, like Northern Powerhouse Rail between Liverpool and Manchester, are at a very, very early conceptual stage. But then take a look at the day-to-day spending again. Big squeeze there at the end, you can see, in the final years of the decade. That is tough, even potentially for schools and hospitals. And it's not wild speculation to expect the hope from the government would be being to afford a little top-up here towards the end of the decade. But if the Chancellor sticks to her borrowing rules, that would mean yet more tax rises. The big hope is that faster economic growth solves the problem. So that is not just the aim of today's plans, but vital to delivering them.
Lamwell, one of the key questions tonight is how soon will voters notice any change? Some of the other plans announced today include the £3 cap on a single bus fare in England will be extended until March 2027. There's more than £1 billion extra going into training and apprenticeships and almost £2.5 billion a year to rebuild 500 schools in England. Our correspondent Coletta Smith has been talking to people in Oldham and Rochdale to see what they make of it all.
There are lots of moments in everyone's day where the Chancellor's choices touch our wallets.
I use the bus a lot.
Do you?
Yeah.
The government's sort of spending money on making sure that those bus prices are capped. Is that important? Is that the right thing to be spending money on?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
And there's more cash for regional transport routes like Sunderland and Newcastle, Nottingham and Derby, and here in Greater Manchester. On this particular route, the plans are to add extra stops along the way into Manchester. And crucially, they have to link up with places where there are already plans in place to build lots more homes. And that's what the Chancellor is hoping to fund.
People are waiting 4 or 5 years just to get a home. It's not fair.
More social homes to rent. Is that a good idea?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, people can't afford to rent nowadays because the cost of living crisis has gone up.
Sean was homeless a few years ago.
If you're going to build social housing, it's good, but it doesn't happen overnight. I mean, how long does it take to build a house?
Along the road in Littleborough with a growing family,
3 pennies.
Charlotte would love to buy a bigger house.
We probably couldn't have afforded the place that we had now without help from parents. They're building more homes, but there's no other resources, like no extra schools, no extra services.
In Oldham, Kieran is the first face people see at the local A&E.
They can't get in with a GP. There's no appointments available. So again, they're being referred to us.
Is it relief to you to hear a government saying we're going to put a lot more money in the NHS? Or does it feel like something that you've heard before?
I feel like it's something that we're always hearing, but we don't see it. And I can't say that I've actually seen any changes really, apart from, like I said, the increase of wait times in the waiting room.
I think I've forgotten how my GP looks. I've not seen them in, 2-3 years, and I'm a diabetic.
Table 3. At this school, the head teacher is delighted with the extra money for education.
It's been really challenging. We've had to really prioritise and do the things that we must do, we've got to do, instead of the things that we really want to provide for our children.
Every year we are getting more children with special need, but parents are struggling, teachers are struggling because there's not enough funding. So we do definitely need that.
The Local Government Association are warning that this money won't stop council taxes having to go up. But there's cautious optimism here
Be confident.
that the government's new cash will hit the spot. Coletta Smith, BBC News in Oldham.
Well, let's get the thoughts of Chris Mason and Faisal Islam, who are with me. Faisal, quite a lot to chew over tonight, but actually a lot more to come next week as well.
Yeah, and it's going to take some time for this to filter through to the users of public services. If the government have this right, though, in construction industry, for example, in other sorts of industries, you will see some of the benefits of building new railways, building new hospitals and the like. I think one of the key sort of metrics for whether this is success or not is not just the amount of public investment, it's whether it brings in the private sector to invest, because they're confident enough in the government's plans, and they are using some innovative ways to lend money directly to the private sector without it counting as debt, which was one of Rachel Reeves's innovations. We are going to get further detail in infrastructure strategy, industrial strategy and NHS 10-year strategy too, and so I think judging exactly where it goes will depend on that detail, but it's not a quick fix, but nor was it meant to be.
And Chris, I think I lost track of the number of times today I heard the phrase long-term or longer term.
Yes, so there's that, and then there's the inevitable process after an event like this, of the kind of peeling away of the layers of the onion. This is the main document that accompanied the spending review today, and an acknowledgement from the Treasury tonight, Coletta mentioned it there, of an expectation of some council tax rises to pay for the funding of the police. And a real sense, when you look at the numbers, you saw Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, smiles at the end of my report, of how relatively well the NHS has done and how massive a proportion of day-to-day public spending goes on the health service. But yes, there has also been an element of the standard critique of politicians being turned on its head today. So often there's the accusation of being short-termist, thinking about the election just around the corner. The political challenge they've taken on here is being consciously long-term. Now, yes, they hope that there's economic gains in the short term from building long-term infrastructure, because you've got to build it, and that involves bringing in people to do it. But the longer-term bet is that it provides an economic stimulus, as well as creating a better public realm, better public services, that, yes, improve their prospects, but also, they hope, improve the country. The political rub is, can they do it quickly enough to get any political credit for it? And there are Labour MPs particularly concerned about that.
All right, thanks so much for now. Chris Mason, Faisal Islam, thank you. And there will be more on all of this on Newsnight shortly. Let's hear from Victoria.
Hi, Jane. Yep, tonight, key questions on Newsnight. Has Rachel Reeves made the right choices? Will voters notice, and when? Big political and economic brains tell us what it means for the UK in the short term and the long term. Newsnight in about a quarter of an hour on BBC Two, iPlayer, and for viewers around the globe on BBC News. See you then.
Thank you, Victoria. Now we will turn to the rest of the night's news, and a leisure centre has been set on fire in the town of Larne in Northern Ireland this evening after its windows were smashed by people wearing masks. A local MLA said the site had been attacked by thugs. It comes after 2 nights of violence in Ballymena, about 20 miles away. Rioting broke out there on Monday after a protest about an alleged sexual assault in the town. The police service of Northern Ireland had already requested help from other forces in the wake of the violence, which was described as racist thuggery. Well, let's go straight to our Ireland correspondent, Sarah Gervin, who is in Ballymena this evening. Are we looking at a spread of this violence, Sarah?
Yeah, it certainly seems so, and things are moving really quickly here in Ballymena again this evening. Tonight, Jane, there's a heavy police presence. Officers are under attack again for the 3rd night in a row, with bottles, with bricks and with fireworks. Now, police dogs have been deployed to push those crowds back, and we've just seen 2 police water cannons arrive as well. And as you say, we've seen those pictures from Larne Leisure Centre this evening. That's a town about 20 miles away from here. That building building has been attacked. Fires were set there, although police tell us they now are under control. Now, it's understood a number of people were moved from Ballymena temporarily to that leisure centre, although we understand they have now left Larne. Now, there have been many calls for calm over the past few days. These don't seem to have been heeded. Here's how things have panned out here in Ballymena over the past 24 hours. 2 nights of intense violence have left homes destroyed, cars on fire, and 32 police officers injured. Police have described the disorder as racist thuggery and say they're treating the attacks as racially motivated hate crimes. This morning, another clean-up, but the events of the past few days have left their mark. Around these streets, residents are beginning to announce their nationalities. Filipino families are putting stickers on their homes, and there are also lots of union flags with signs saying things like, "This is a British household." Now, off camera, people have told us they hope that will be enough to stop their homes being attacked. Meanwhile, others are packing up and leaving. The family who lived here moved to Northern Ireland from Bulgaria a decade ago, but are now moving out, no longer feeling safe after rioters ransacked their home.
It's not possible to wait to see what's going to happen. I have to save my children. 10 years we live in here and work and pay rent normally. Going to school normally, we never make problem.
Others say tension around immigration has been building in this community for some time.
There has been a failure to integrate with a small section of the immigrants. 95%, 99% integrate, great, and we got on with them, and it's very regrettable that it's come to this. This is a beautiful wee area to live in years ago, and everybody got along well. This has to stop.
Meanwhile, the Police Service of Northern Ireland has asked for assistance from other forces.
I have now activated the request for mutual aid resources from policing colleagues in Great Britain to ensure we have the necessary support to maintain public order and bring offenders to justice in the days to come.
6 arrests have been made so far, and police say they plan to significantly increase officer numbers moving into this evening and over the next few days. Sarah Gervin, BBC News in Ballymena.
Now, they were photos that shocked the world. The emaciated figure of Siwa Ashur in Gaza, just 6 months old and facing starvation. The BBC filmed her just over a month ago in hospital, suffering from advanced malnutrition. Well, today, Siwa was among a group of children, some with cancer, pulled out of Gaza to be taken for treatment in Jordan. Our special correspondent Fergal Keane travelled with Siwa from Jordan's border with Israel.
Out of Gaza, a small story of hope. Siwa Ashur, her tiny frame carried onto Jordanian soil. Siwa weighs 3 kilos. She should be at least twice that.
Welcome, Reem. Welcome. And so Siwa has just arrived. She's now going to be taken to a man where there'll be a diagnosis and the beginning of her treatment. And while this is a wonderful moment for her family and for the hopes of this child, of course, there are so many other sick children in Gaza who will not make it out to treatment here.
16 other sick children joined Siwa today, some suffering from cancer. Here, no chaos, no pleading for food. Peace and plenty.
You're here in Jordan. I just have to ask you, what does it feel like?
It feels like there is a truce. We will spend our night without rockets and bombing, without anything in God's will.
This is what they left behind. The grief. The chaos. After months of Israeli blockade, desperate people scramble for the little aid now available. Our journalist first filmed Siwa Ashur back in April, a child who struggled to cry. Her mother and doctors spoke of a severe shortage of the right baby formula to feed her under the Israeli blockade.
She's like a skeleton.
Whenever I look at her, I cry. I cannot bear how thin she is.
This was last month, at home with her mother and grandmother. And today, saying goodbye to family before leaving for Jordan. Those trapped in Gaza, happy for Siwar, who's escaping. What you notice most is the utter weariness of parents and children. All that they have lost. Siwar's father Salah, who is blind since before the war. And Najwa, who's pregnant and exhausted, on the last miles to Amman. In Jordan's capital, just over 100 miles from Gaza, the last transfer into the arms of a nurse taking Siwar for specialist treatment.
Thank God I have got out of the crisis. It felt like I'd been there 100 years. My heart is finally at ease, away from the tanks and the rest. We couldn't sleep at all, not a single night.
Tonight, Siwar and those who watch over her will sleep in peace. Fergal Keane, BBC News, Amman.
The United States is preparing to move some of its staff and their families out of Iraq, Bahrain and Kuwait because of what's been described as heightened security risks in the region. Let's find out more from Tom Baitman, who's in Washington. What's prompted this move then, Tom?
Well, the backdrop to this is a critical moment in the nuclear talks between the US and Iran. It is now 2 weeks, in fact, since President Trump said he was giving Tehran 2 months to comply with what he wanted in those talks designed to try to stop the Iranians developing a nuclear weapon. Now, he said earlier today that he was growing less confident in that process. And we have also had some quite threatening rhetoric from the Iranians saying that they would strike US military bases in the region if a conflict was imposed upon them, they said. Now, these evacuations, partial evacuations, both from the embassy in Baghdad and some military bases in Kuwait and Bahrain, are significant, but they may also be designed to put some pressure on the Iranians in those talks. And at the same time, there has been some tense conversations between President Trump and the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, someone who has always favoured a military rather than a diplomatic path when it comes to the US and Iran.
Tom, thank you. Tom Baitman. The UK and the EU say they've reached a political agreement about Gibraltar. The government said the deal would protect the sovereignty of the British overseas territory while avoiding the need for checks on people and goods moving across the border to Spain. The agreement was one of the last remaining issues to be settled after Brexit. Brian Wilson, who co-founded the Beach Boys and created their unique sound, has died at the age of 82. Considered one of the most significant songwriters of the 20th century, he was responsible for hits including Good Vibrations and God Only Knows. But behind his enormous talent and success was a complicated life, including drug dependency and mental illness. David Silito looks back at his life.
Play hard and strong all the way.
What you're watching here is pop history. One song, 90 hours of recording, 5 studios, 17 sessions, and one man in total control, Brian Wilson. Good Vibrations redefined what a pop song could be. In a little over 4 years, he'd written and recorded 11 Beach Boys albums, and he was still only 23. The statement from his family beginning, "We are heartbroken," marks the passing of one of pop's greatest songwriters.
The one and only Beach Boys!
It had all begun in 1961 when Brian formed a band with his brothers and cousin Mike Love. They were given the name the Beach Boys to cash in on the surfing craze. Brian couldn't even swim, but he could write songs. However, the endless pressure to tour and produce up to 3 albums a year broke him. He decided his future lay in the studio.
We had a meeting one day, and I go, guys, I'm sorry to say I have to quit the touring group. Mike got a tear, and Carl got a little shook up. But I said, but listen, it's going to be well worth it because I'm going to write you some good songs.
What followed was the album Pet Sounds, a thrown gauntlet to their great rivals, the Beatles.
If you should ever leave me, your life would still go on, believe me.
But behind this artistic explosion was the beginning of his drug-fueled mental unravelling. He began to compose in a sandbox. One tune was locked away when he thought it had set fire to a nearby building.
I love the colourful clothes you wear.
His return then to the stage in the 1990s seemed almost a miracle. Amongst those paying tribute today, Sir Elton John, who said he was his biggest influence, a musical revolutionary. Brian Wilson, a beach boy who was deaf in one ear and afraid of the water, and yet helped define the sound of the 60s. He once said, "I'm no genius, I'm just a hard-working guy." Some of us don't agree.
Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys, who's died at the age of 82. And that takes us to a look at the weather. Ben Rich has joined me. Hello.
Hi, Jane. Thank you very much indeed. Three main ingredients to our weather over the next couple of days. Some warmth, some humidity and some thunderstorms. And those thunderstorms have been brewing today across the western side of continental Europe. Across parts of France, Spain, in the Bay of Biscay today, we've seen around 50,000 lightning flashes. These are just a few of those during this evening, heading in our direction. Now, these storms weakening to an extent on their journey northwards, but we will see some heavy rain and perhaps some flashes of lightning, some rumbles of thunder in the southwest corner as we go through the night. It's going to be very warm, very muggy overnight and into tomorrow morning, and a really wet start for the Channel Islands. Parts of southwest England and Wales, where we have a Met Office yellow warning in force for these thundery downpours, which could give a lot of rain in a short space of time, maybe some travel disruption, squally winds as well. Same sort of thing for Northern Ireland when those heavy thundery downpours set in. Now, for central, eastern, northern parts of England, some sunny spells, but a few scattered showers and thunderstorms breaking out into the afternoon. I think most of Scotland will be dry. Temperatures will depend on how much sunshine you see, but 23, 24, 25 degrees, feeling very humid as well. Humid tomorrow night with some further showers and thunderstorms drifting northwards. Sunny spells and scattered showers as we go through the day on Friday. Very warm, in fact, feeling, I think, quite hot across parts of eastern England, maybe 28 or 29 degrees. But that will give rise to some quite vicious thunderstorms, I think, across the southeast corner as we go through Friday night. They should slowly clear as we head through Saturday, and it is going to turn drier and a little fresher as we head through the weekend. Check your local forecast on the BBC Weather app. Jane.
Ben, thank you very much. And that is the BBC News at 10 for tonight. Now it's time for the latest wherever you are from the whole team here. Good night.